Let's get ethical, ethical. I want to get ethical. Let's get into ethics, yeah.
For this assignment, we will be presenting a short video on why ethical egoism is an appealing ethical position. Firstly, we want to define some key terms. The difference between ethics and morality. Morality is a personal view of right and wrong, while ethics are a set of values that define our moral obligations, which are the rules we follow based on authority. Egoism is an ethical system that has a number of different branches. One of these branches is ethical egoism, which is a normative ethical position that says that people ought to pursue and maximize their own self-interests. Ethical egoism differs from psychological egoism, which is a descriptive position that states that people naturally do what is in their own self-interest.
A claim often used against ethical egoism is that it doesn't take into account the interests of others. This counterclaim is based on the altruistic assumption that we have duties to others simply because they could be helped or harmed by what we do. This assumption is faulty because in reality we have no duty to help others, and the assumption that we do could actually be very harmful. Firstly, when we assume that our actions can help others, we need to take into consideration the fact that every person is uniquely aware of their own needs and desires. Therefore, we are not in a position to attempt to help others, as we can't perfectly assess what others need in any given time. If we attempt to help somebody, while not truly understanding what that person needs, then we may be doing more harm than good. For example, let's say you see this woman on a street who has torn clothes on. In an altruist mind, they are doing them a service in deciding to buy them new clothes and boxing up their old clothes. In reality, the woman may be upset because all her clothes were actually passed down through her family and have a ton of sentimental meaning and value. An altruist judged her appearance without knowing anything about her and actually didn't help her at all. Also, when attempting to try to help others, there's an actual break in personal boundaries. Automatically, their life isn't their own, and you are in a sense infringing upon their personal space and their individualism. People tend to keep their personal life personal, and if you are trying to help, you're invading not only their personal space, but invading on their own personal privacy. Especially if the recipients never even asked for your help in the first place.
Lastly, already subjecting someone to a specific view when you don't have any evidence or knowledge of who they are is very demeaning. Then automatically assuming that you are better off than they are just because you don't have a similar lifestyle, you automatically judge and assume they're a charity case. Not everyone is in need of help, and even though in your mind you believe to be helping this person, in reality, you're just subjecting them to a lower social standard and judging them even though you truly don't know anything. With this sudden assumption, you're robbing this person of their own dignity and self-respect and overall humiliating them in the process. This is why, in most charity opportunities, the recipient is actually more resentful than grateful. However, this doesn't mean that you should never help others. The mere fact that you act on your own desires does not mean that you're only looking out for yourself. It just all depends on what you desire. Let's say you convince your teacher to cancel a test. Yes, this will benefit you and your classmates. Ethical egoism doesn't forbid such actions. In fact, it's recommended. However, this act is only right because you benefit from it, not the fact that the others did.
Often, the actions that are in your own self-interest are also morally acceptable and optimal. Even though it may not seem so at prima facie or at first face, ethical egoism is compatible and consistent with common sense morality. Under ethical egoism, some of the following obligations are still important. Firstly, the duty not to harm others. If we were to harm someone else, then they will not care if they harm us, and they may actually have an incentive to do so. Harming another also leaves us in a position where our reputation is tainted, and we are viewed as offenders. As a result, we may be metaphorically exiled from our community, meaning if we are ever to need help, nobody will want to. help us. Also, the harm you inflict upon another person could be so bad that we end up in prison, which shows that it benefits ourselves emotionally and physically not to harm others. The duty not to lie. If we lie, we are susceptible to having a bad reputation. For example, there is a math homework that was due today, which you didn't complete. When your math teacher asks you if you completed it, you say that you did. This is a lie and wouldn't be acceptable under ethical egoism. This is because lying to your teacher wouldn't be in your own self-interest, because if the teacher were to find out, she would think of you as a liar and lose trust in you. This is damaging in the long run and hurts your standing within the school, as you now have a reputation of being a liar. Therefore, lying and other acts that are similar to lying are not suggested by ethical egoism, because they are not in your own self-interest in the long run.
The duty to keep our promises. When having mutual benefit relationships, there needs to be a secure ideal of trust and respect. This way, each participant will benefit and that there wouldn't be any downside to the relationship. However, we can be ignorant to believe that if we don't hold up our side of the argument that they will. Therefore, it proves we need to keep our own promises so others will keep theirs and everyone will benefit. Therefore, ethical egoism is compatible with common sense morality as acts such as lying, harming others, and not keeping promises are not suggested under ethical egoism. This is because of the long-term harm that the actions bring. Also, ethical egoism is a rejection of altruism. This is based on the dangerous assumption that other people's interests matter. This assumption could lead to potential degrading, intrusive, and ineffective attempts at helping others. Ethical egoism, however, still allows you to help others, if it is in your own self-interest. Therefore, you can get the best of both worlds. For these reasons, the position of ethical egoism is very appealing and a useful system to deal with ethical issues.